He is 62 years old, and he has been behind bars for more than a decade. He will likely die in a California prison cell. He has no plea deal to protect, no reputation left to save, and by any reasonable measure, nothing left to lose. And yet, for 30 years, Marion Suge Knight has said almost nothing about the night his best-known artist was shot 4 times in the passenger seat of his own BMW. That changed this month. As jury selection opened in the first, and only murder trial ever connected to the assassination of Tupac Shakur, Knight broke his silence in a series of interviews from Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility near San Diego, where he is serving a 28-year sentence for a fatal 2015 hit-and-run in Compton. What he said was not a confession. It was closer to a warning, aimed less at the man on trial than at the industry that surrounds him. This is the story of how a 30-year-old cold case finally reached a Las Vegas courtroom, why the only living eyewitness still refuses to talk, and why one name keeps surfacing every time someone gets close to the truth. To understand why this trial matters, you have to go back to September 7, 1996, a night that began as a celebration and ended as one of the most consequential unsolved murders in American pop culture. Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight were in Las Vegas for a heavyweight title fight, Mike Tyson against Bruce Seldon at the MGM Grand. According to CNN's reporting on the case, Tyson's win came in under 2 minutes, but the chaos that followed in the casino lobby would echo for 3 decades. As thousands of fight-goers poured out of the arena, a Death Row Records associate spotted Orlando "Baby" Lane Anderson, a young member of the Southside Compton Crips who was allegedly involved in an earlier robbery of a Death Row medallion. Surveillance cameras captured what happened next. Tupac and several Death Row associates, including Knight, assaulted Anderson in the lobby. Hours later, Shakur was riding in the passenger seat of Knight's BMW, heading to a Knight-owned nightclub on East Flamingo Road, when a white Cadillac pulled alongside them at a red light near the Strip. Gunfire erupted. Tupac was hit multiple times. 1 bullet destroyed his right lung. He died 6 days later at age 25. Knight was grazed but survived. No weapon was ever recovered. The Cadillac was never found. Orlando Anderson, the man many investigators long suspected of being involved, was killed in an unrelated gang shooting in Compton in 1998. For a quarter-century, the case sat in the file drawer of unsolved American crimes, kept alive mostly by documentaries, podcasts, and message board theories. Then the man believed to have organized it started talking, publicly, repeatedly, and for profit. Dwayne "Kef D. Davis was Orlando Anderson's uncle and a former shot caller in the same Compton Crips set. 4 years after the shooting, he did something almost no criminal defense attorney would ever advise. He talked about it, openly, on camera, over and over again. He gave interviews to A&E, USA Network, and other outlets. He appeared in the 2018 docuseries Death Row Chronicles, describing the fatal shots as coming from the back seat of the Cadillac. And in 2019, he published a memoir called Compton Street Legend, which, as NPR reported, he later described in interviews as telling the real truth about that night. In it, he detailed obtaining the gun used in the shooting and being present in the car when it happened. 4 years, none of that translated into charges. Davis had given a proffer statement to a joint federal task force investigating the murder of the notorious B.I.G. back in 2008/2009, and he apparently believed that agreement shielded him permanently. It didn't. As CNN has reported, Las Vegas prosecutors argued they were never bound by an agreement made with a different jurisdiction investigating a different murder, and the court agreed. On September 29, 2023, Las Vegas police arrested Davis at his home in Henderson, Nevada. He was indicted on a single count of murder with a deadly weapon, carrying a gang enhancement, and has been held without bail ever since. He is now 63 years old. Prosecutors are not claiming Davis pulled the trigger. Their theory, as laid out at trial, is that he supplied the firearm from the back seat of the Cadillac and directed the shooting as retaliation for the beating his nephew took at the MGM Grand hours earlier. Davis has pleaded not guilty, and his defense strategy is, by any measure, an extraordinary gamble. His attorneys have argued that his own memoir was exaggerated for entertainment, ghost-written with embellishments, and should not be treated as a factual confession. In a 2025 jailhouse interview, Davis claimed he had never even read the finished book himself. That defense ran into a serious problem. Every call made from a county jail is recorded. Signs are posted next to the phones. Automated warnings play before the line connects. Investigators listened anyway, because that's exactly where cases like this one are often won or lost. In the days after his 2023 arrest, Davis made a call from custody in which he was asked directly about the memoir. According to court filings, his answer undercut the "it wasn't really me" defense his legal team would later build. Clark County Judge Carly Kearney ultimately ruled the book admissible, finding, as multiple outlets including NPR and CNN have reported, that Davis had publicly promoted it as truthful rather than fictional, and that he had effectively adopted its contents as his own account. A 2008 police interview Davis gave, portions of which surfaced in a true crime book and later documentaries, was also ruled admissible this past summer. That combination, the memoir, the media interviews, the recorded jail call, and the earlier police interview, forms the backbone of a case that, unusually, has almost no physical evidence behind it. No gun. No Cadillac. No surviving co-defendant willing to testify. Prosecutors are, in effect, asking a jury to convict a man largely on the strength of his own words. Buried inside Davis's 2008 proffer session, the same one he believed would protect him forever, was a name that would eventually become one of the most explosive threads in the entire case: Sean "Diddy" Combs. According to reporting from USA Today and court filings from the Clark County District Attorney's Office, Davis told investigators that Combs had offered a bounty for Tupac and Suge Knight, allegedly stating in front of dozens of people that he would pay handsomely for their deaths. That name reportedly appears dozens of times across prosecutors' 2024 court filings related to the case. Combs has consistently and publicly denied any involvement in Shakur's murder, and Las Vegas police have stated on the record that he has never been named a suspect or charged in connection with the case. But the allegation has never fully gone away, in part because Suge Knight has spent years amplifying it from behind bars, on the PBD podcast, in a 2025 interview with People magazine, and again this month with ABC News. Knight has repeatedly suggested that the money behind the shooting traces back to Combs, though he has offered no corroborating evidence beyond his own account and Davis's proffer statements. It's worth being precise here. An allegation made by a co-defendant seeking cooperation credit, repeated by a man with his own long history of feuds and legal troubles, is not proof of anything in a court of law. Combs has not been charged in this case, and nothing in the current Nevada prosecution accuses him of a crime. But the allegation has become impossible to separate from the public narrative around this trial, and it's one reason the case has drawn national attention well beyond the hip-hop world that has followed it for 30 years. Which brings us back to Suge Knight, the only person alive who was inside that BMW when the shots were fired. Knight is currently serving a 28-year sentence at a California state prison for a 2015 hit-and-run that killed a man named Terry Carter during a dispute in a Compton parking lot. He will not be eligible for release until he is well into his 70s, if he lives that long. He has been listed as a potential witness in the Davis trial, meaning prosecutors could compel his testimony through subpoena. But getting Knight into a witness chair and getting him to say anything useful, according to virtually everyone who has covered this case, are two very different problems. In his recent ABC News interview, Knight made his position unmistakable, he said. The trial has nothing to do with him, and warned that whoever tried to force him into that courtroom would regret it. He has framed his refusal to identify a shooter not as fear, but as a code, telling interviewers in the past that testifying against someone is, in his view, a worse betrayal than violence itself. It's a philosophy that is easy to find morally troubling and equally easy to misread as simple stonewalling. Knight has, at the same time, been unusually vocal about everything except naming who fired the shots, repeating the Diddy bounty allegation, mocking Davis's legal strategy as a doomed long shot, and expressing regret and grief over Tupac's death in interviews with People and other outlets. It's a contradiction he doesn't try especially hard to resolve. Intense loyalty to a dead friend, paired with an unwillingness to help convict the man he believes is guilty, because doing so would violate a code he says matters more to him than justice as the court defines it. Whether that stance survives a subpoena is one of the open questions hanging over the next several weeks of testimony. The trial finally began on August 10, 2026, nearly 30 years to the month after Tupac's death, after being pushed back twice, first from an initial 2025 date and then again to accommodate defense motions seeking new witness interviews. A Clark County jury of 12, plus 4 alternates, was seated on August 13 following days of questioning of more than 100 prospective jurors. Opening statements followed shortly after, with prosecutors telling the jury plainly that they do not believe Davis pulled the trigger, only that he supplied the weapon and directed the shooting. Davis's defense has leaned into the weakness of 30-year-old evidence, arguing that the investigation has gone cold and that key facts were never fully examined. His attorneys have also tried, unsuccessfully so far, to have his prior statements excluded, including through a Nevada Supreme Court immunity appeal that was rejected just before trial, clearing the way for both the memoir and the earlier police interview to be used against him. The case is expected to run roughly a month. If convicted, Davis faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Tupac's family, sitting through the proceedings has been described by his stepbrother, Marion Shakur, as exhausting after decades of waiting, but he has said he remains hopeful that a fair trial will finally surface the truth, whatever that turns out to be. There is something almost unprecedented about this case. There is no murder weapon. There is no getaway car. There is no cooperating witness willing to point a finger in open court. What there is 30 years of a man talking, in interviews, in a memoir, in a jailhouse phone call, until his own words became the case against him. And there is one other man, the only person who watched it happen from 2 feet away, who has decided that his silence is the last piece of loyalty he has left to give. Whether that's enough to convict Dwayne Davis is now up to 12 jurors in Las Vegas. Whether it's enough to finally answer who really ordered Tupac Shakur's death, the shooter, the financier, the full chain of decisions that put a white Cadillac at that red light, may still depend on whether Suge Knight ever decides to say more than he already has. For now, all anyone has is his last word on the subject, delivered from a prison interview room. Tupac isn't gone. He's still in the mind of everyone who knew him, including, Knight says, his own teenage son, who grew up idolizing a father's murdered friend he never got the chance to meet. What do you think? Will this trial finally deliver the truth, or is the biggest name in this story still being protected? Let us know in the comments. Sources referenced: ABC News, CNN, NPR, Complex, Time, NBC News, 8 News Now, CLOS, People Magazine, USA Today, and Clark County District Court filings related to State of Nevada versus Dwayne Keith Davis.